Have you ever heard of motion equals emotion? Well, have you ever watched a video or a shot and then you're like, the shot's kind of dead? Or when you're shooting, it's like, oh, it's kind of meh. So that's why motion equals emotion. So today I'm breaking down movements, whether it's from your camera or your subject. Well, either way, it's gonna make a big improvement in your shot. So let's get right to it. Let's roll. So thank you again for coming back to my channel. If you haven't done so, please hit the like and subscribe button. That would definitely help improve my content with the algorithm. And of course, if you are coming back for the valuable content that you are receiving, again, I appreciate any one of you that's coming back. Still a small channel, but the hope is to grow more and to bring more value to a larger audience. So well, we'll see how that goes. But anyways, today I want to talk about motion, which equals emotion, believe it or not. So one of the things that I usually do, for the most part in every shoot that I do, maybe it's just the type of style. And this is just how I shoot in general, how I film in general. And it has served me well for, this past 15, 16 years. And I always incorporate movements in my shot. And I hope this video will kind of help anyone that's probably getting started, or even if you're, in the midst, you're already a seasoned professional, but you just want a different perspective. And, hopefully my perspective will kind of give you more insights to why, motion equals emotion. So the first one is you move the camera. Now, this is the most simplest tip. For me personally, because I do shoot a lot of brand commercials, corporate videos, weddings, I'm dealing with a lot of subjects that are either they're not, I would say not seasoned in front of a camera, and two, they're not professional actors or models. So these tips, especially if you're trying to create something, or you're trying to invoke an emotion with someone that is not really comfortable in front of camera. Probability of me filming someone that has zero experience in front of a camera is probably high. If you get a model, great. You can kind of work with them to kind of get the intended shot that you want. But here we're talking more of creating motions that would invoke an emotion, and the caveat is you are the one that's creating the motion. So let me give you an example. So this can be a simple pan. This could be using a gimbal to, whether to push in or to push out of the subject matter. Now, the reason why I have all these types of movements is because when I'm putting it together in the editing suite, I want to keep my audience engaged. That's probably my number one thing when I talk about motion equals emotion, because from my experience, having just a static shot sometimes doesn't necessarily translate to the attention that you want the viewer to feel. So don't get me wrong, there are some shots that majestically good with just basic composition and boom, you get this really nice wide of an imagery of, could be a building, could be something like that. That's fine. But what I'm talking about is also creating motion that would equal an emotion. So I personally, when I'm filming, I'm always keeping the viewer in mind. How would the viewer react? And for me, motion is always the top priority to kind of keep the viewer engaged. And you're telling the viewer to look at a certain or feel a certain way when you're showing them a certain shot. And motion is definitely one of those elements that keep viewers engaged, especially when they're watching something for a longer period of time. So with that being said, for this point, you're talking about you creating the motion. So again, this could be a simple pan, it could be a simple tilt, it could be using a gimbal to push in or out, or doing some following your subjects and whatnot, but incorporating movement based on what you can do with the camera, based on the equipment you have to invoke this certain movement. So that's tip number one. You create the motion using your camera. So next point is direct the movement. So earlier we talked about, having a good composite shot of like just a really nice static shot, and you can actually direct your subjects to either walk in parallel, walk towards, walk to the left, walk to the right. You create an open communication with your subject, whether it's a model or a person that's not comfortable in front of the camera. You have to establish that relationship in order for you to be comfortable giving the instructions, and in order for them to be comfortably receiving the instructions. So going back to my old video, which I'm gonna put it up here, communication is important when it comes to having your subjects being directed in a static shot. So going back to the notion of motion equals emotion, not just using the camera to make the movement, but also instructing your subject or directing your subject to do a certain action that you want them to do. And again, just make sure they're comfortable doing it. I've seen plenty in the past, whether it's weddings or corporate videos or, any of the genres that I'm filming in, people are not comfortable. So making sure if you're going to have your subjects, walking in a shot or doing something in your shot, just make sure that you pre-plan your shot and make sure that you communicate what your actions might be for them. And the main thing is, if they're not comfortable doing what you want them to do, then that's a different problem. So pre-planning, knowing your subject, knowing who you're working with, will definitely take you a long way in getting the shot that you want to get. So just keep that in mind when moving forward with this tip, directing the movement. Next one is everyday life connection. So this is where I think realism comes into play. So this tip is for, in my point of view, what I normally do to create an establishing shot. So for some of you who don't know, establishing shots, if you're new to this channel or if you're new to videography, an establishing shot is to establish, where is the setting of the scene is going to take place. So let's say if you're shooting a wedding, you arrive at the chapel, you want the viewer to know where the couple is getting married. So you shoot maybe a wide establishing shot of the chapels, so that's an example of a establishing shot. In the same lines of getting it a static shot, but you're not necessarily directing what's in the shot. You're just taking what the elements are provided, whether it's nature-based, whether it's something. Well, I wouldn't say nature-based. Basically, it's organic motions that it's out of your control, but you're capturing it in that moment of time. So whether you're shooting a conference, people walking in and out of, ballrooms, or another good example is if you're shooting in a coffee shop, then you want to get like the ambient of the coffee shop, like, people sitting around, talking, drinking, sipping a cup of coffee, all of that. So this is more catered to establishing shots to kind of create or capture, not more so of create, but capturing a situation where it's organically produced with the situation given. So something to keep in mind moving forward when you're thinking about, emotions equals emotion. The next one I want to talk about is using foregrounds. And this bring me back to the whole, I'm going to put the link up there for the video, depth. Like, you're creating depth in your shot. So a lot of people always tend to forget the foreground. They usually have, the subject in the foreground and then you have a background. But I personally like to create movement in my foreground. Now, what do I mean by this? In this shot, you can kind of see my foreground moving and the subject in the middle of the shot. So you have like the three elements. You have your foreground that is moving, your subject in the middle, and you have the background. So that gives you more depth. So I use this a lot to kind of make it more, I would say cinematic. It's more dynamic, just using your foreground as a way to kind of, using it to kind of invoke a certain emotion. You're keeping the viewers engaged while watching this shot. So hope that makes sense. And, use your foreground more to kind of, whether it's like you're pushing in or whether you're just doing, in the example I give you, like just like you're gliding as close as to the foreground as possible, just to create some motion in the shot. So hope that helps, and you should give it a try and see how it goes. The last point I want to bring up is motivated movement. Now, what do I mean by this? So in the beginning, I talk about, because of the types of genre I shoot, like weddings, corporate videos, and all the jazz, the probability of having someone that is not comfortable in front of the camera is high, right? So motivated movement means that you are incorporating movement with the subject, or you're having the subject move in your shot, but also you are actually moving as well. So this is like that. I call it as well balanced shot, but it has to have a motivation to it. So it requires, one, a lot of pre-planning, two, open and really good communication and articulating the type of actions you want your subject to do. Plus, you're also incorporating your skill set, whether it's on a gimbal, whether it's, a simple pan and tilt, whether it's even handheld, you're incorporating that technique that would also involve the subject conducting an action in the shot. This is where I think makes the difference between an amateur, a seasoned professional, and a professional on top of their game. If you can do a motivated movement properly, I think, then you're comfortable doing this. There is a increase in your production quality in the product that you're going to produce. And it took me a while to actually, get comfortable doing it. Especially when the hard situations are when like certain like brides or couples, they want, they don't want like a typical static shot of, the videographer shooting alongside the photographer. They wanted more of an action sequence. So you got to think of like, oh, okay, if they want more movement, then you gotta learn how to direct them. You gotta learn how to be comfortable telling them what to do. And because they're okay with you doing that, then you should be comfortable and okay telling them what to do. At the same time, getting comfortable and also understanding the technical aspects of like holding your gimbal, or learning the aspects of your monopod, your tripod. You have to be comfortable using the gear that you have to kind of make sure that your vision of creating this motivated movement is executed well. And when it comes together in post, it looks like the bomb, right? So this is where I feel that distinguishes the amateurs from the really professionals, is that you have this element of directing, being technically savvy, but also combining the two and creating your creative sphere wider, broader, so that it will be felt when someone is actually watching your stuff. So keep that in mind, as you move forward in your career, and knowing how to, and training yourself how to create, motivated movements in your shot. So yeah, I hope this video today helps in clarifying motion equals emotion, and I think it will help anyone that is either starting out, in this industry, or in a seasoned professional as well. This is how I kind of, stayed in the forefront of creating work that is engaging, depending on the clientele, and it have served me well. There was a time when there was no gimbals. There was a time when there was no monopods, or light tripod. So having to incorporate movement, it will be determined how technology moves forward as well. There was a time when there's no drones. So, a lot of things have changed in order for you to create motion that can equate into an emotional response from the viewer. So just keep up. Yeah, if you're gonna be in this industry, you have to keep up to a certain level. It does get tiring sometimes, but I think it will help you in your future self. So again, I hope this video will definitely bring some value in terms of creating emotion, using motion in your shots. So yeah, again, thank you again for coming back, and thank you again for listening. Thank you again for digesting this information. If you haven't done so, please comment, like, and subscribe. I would definitely appreciate all of that. So thank you again, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.